Hello all, I hope you are doing well in these unprecedented times. I'm glad that word is now back into the vocabulary. Welcome to Lockdown 2 here in the UK. Today we're going to be putting all that to one side and we're going to be talking to Brian Collings, who is the CEO and founder. Right, you're chairman and chief executive, is that right?
Yes, indeed, and one of the founders originally. So that's probably how I managed to keep the chairman and chief exec as well. Probably not great from a responsibility point of view.
Well, congratulations. There we are. Let's talk about Torstone first of all, because that's what we're going to be looking at today. What exactly is Torstone? What is the mission that you guys are on to solve? What's the problem out there?
No, absolutely. Torstone, we're a leading provider of securities and derivatives processing. So essentially a SaaS provider that does everything that's non-front office. So all that middle office, back office, risk management process, all the way through to the sort of accounting, basically the life cycle of a trade. And all that subsequent consolidation and reconciliation for those trades and positions. We have quite a client base, so a mixture of local and multinational sort of banks and brokers across the world, everything from sort of tier 1, tier 2 down to the sort of tier 3 brokers, and all that sort of fully cloud-based, which allows us to sort of scale up and scale down for those different sized clients. And sort of, I guess our motto, vision motto is sort of fast, flexible, and future-proof, and trying to do that across the globe. So we're sort of headquartered in London, but we've got offices in sort of New York and most recently Toronto, as well as in Asia. We've got Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo as well.
Absolutely. So the sun never sets.
Indeed, and we do that. It's all a sort of 24/7 support and access is what we're trying to achieve.
So I want to just explore one of the things that you mentioned there, and this has kind of been a bit of a running theme really for the last few months, which is a lot of, whether it be on the retail side, on the insurance side, on trading, a lot of banks have, typically speaking, tended to focus on the front end, on the kind of sort of UX experience, but that's only as good as the plumbing behind it, as the foundations, as the back office, as the middle office. Well, do you think that banks as a whole have started to pay a lot more attention to the foundations in order to then obviously enhance the front end?
No, I think you're absolutely right there, and I think always, the front office is there. They are the sort of profit centers. They drive the finances. So attention has always been given, to the front office, I think, in priority. And I think that's gone on for decades. And now we're seeing, and I think partly, the atmosphere around, you sort of mentioned the pandemic, the atmosphere on that infrastructure needing to do some catch up, I think is absolutely there. And we've seen a lot of changes going on over the past couple of years, and sort of focus on making sure that infrastructure is in a much better place to cope with what the world is hitting us with right now.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that fantastic cartoon of the CEO and the CIO, and it's who's going to be driving your digital transformation. There's a great big COVID wrecking ball coming in.
No, absolutely, because I think because of the underinvestment, I think people are having to move pretty quick to get off some of the sort of legacy systems and legacy processes, and trying to make sure that automation is there. And I think, as we've seen with the pandemic, actually some of our clients have done very well. And first and foremost, I think you've got to worry and think about the frontline workers, and many parts of the industry, like the retail side, have badly suffered through this pandemic. But actually, unlike the credit crunch in 2008, I think the banks and brokers have done very well. And we've actually seen volumes of some of our clients going fivefold from their sort of normal daily volumes, peaking. But that means you've got to have infrastructure to cope with that. And I think we've got other things around the corner, like US elections and Brexit. We're going to get those two over and done with as well. They're going to bring more sort of more operational issues, I think, with those transaction volumes increasing.
Looking at again, the financial industry as a whole, do you think part of the reason for some of that increasing is looking at the retail side of, say, trading. You have a lot of people that were spending money on holidays, are now spending that on their Peloton bikes, and also the likes of, there's been an absolute boom of the likes of Robinhood in the US, free trade in the UK. Do you think that that's kind of had a factor in terms of the actual volume, or do you think there's something else at play?
No, I think the volatility and the nervousness in the marketplaces, I think that's been the sort of key from that sort of retail side. I think people wondering, what changes are going on. Obviously, the effects on the retail businesses themselves means I think investments have switched from more retail focused to others, or maybe between different retail businesses. So I think that's created a lot of the volume in the market of people switching from one sector to the other.
Excellent. Well, let's look a bit at the kind of post-trade operational reality since the pandemic. What's been happening here?
Yeah, so I think I'll start off, I guess, with, for ourselves, we're, as you can see, all working from home. And that went pretty smoothly, to be honest. We did have a work from home policy, so our staff were all set up with the right equipment and the right access, so that was very smooth. I think from our clients' point of view, there's been, again, as I mentioned, those increased volumes, because we're SaaS and that scale can work dynamically. That's all worked very well indeed, actually. I mean, being on the cloud has been sort of saving grace for sort of much of this increase in operational flow. I think where you've seen some of the operational issues come out is still in those manual processes, those interactions that are required between people. If they're not in the office, it's all moved to email and phones and video, obviously. And I think some of those processes, I think, are now really being looked at. Particularly, I think one of the things we've seen is in the middle office area. That focus, that's where a lot of the interaction between sort of front and sort of the back office occurs, and I think that interaction, was easier when you're in person, but as that's moved to people working from home, I think that's the area that struggled most. And I think the other, it's certainly been in the press, the other types of issues that have cropped up is in sort of the margining processing, which I know, again, some of the operational processes on legacy systems just not cope with those volumes and increase workflow around the margining.
Looking at working from home, you mentioned, of course, you already had kind of a working from home policy in place, but a lot of organisations did not, and there does seem to be, the expression I always give is a lot of people have to sign for the keys of who has access to the server room, and that kind of is almost the antithesis of working in a SaaS model, working from the cloud. What are some of the other inefficiencies that have been shown in this post-trade realm because of the likes of working from home and really SaaS showing up the on-prem method?
Yeah, I think exactly that sort of access, generally from a SaaS perspective, that's all in place. Clearly very secure, but it's generally a well-trodden path. There's been, with the extra security, there's been the odd person forgetting their second line security sort of passes or electronic passes, but again, a lot of that now is on physically on their phones, so that sort of helps. I think with the legacy systems, that's been more traditional access, and whether that's fingerprinting in the office or physical boxes to get that second level security. And obviously working from home, you don't get that. So I think there's been a little scrabbling around on those legacy systems where people have had to get that access moved to the home office. But generally, I think the scalability of what the sort of SaaS platforms can provide has been the key to getting through parts of this pandemic.
Do you think that because a lot of organizations have been forced to use things like Zoom, like Hangouts, Teams, other platforms available, do you think that has kind of almost been a demo for them to be a bit more out there in terms of trying new technologies? Because again, five years ago, elements like SaaS would have just been met with an eye roll.
No, I completely agree. I think there's two effects here. I think one of them is with the work from home and sort of moving to video. I think people have shown that it is possible and actually quite efficient. Once you're set up and once you have those sort of processes in place. So I think it will become a permanent move. I've certainly, some of our clients we've been speaking to will see that certainly the back office may well be permanent or semi-permanently working from home, because it sort of works well. I think the cybersecurity aspects of that, and certainly we've raised ourselves, is this working from home, improving or not the cybersecurity? I suggest not. You've got to think of extra processes to put in place there. But I think the cybersecurity, what I've seen, so we've been SaaS for over 5 years now, and we sort of moved into that quite early. But I've seen a transformation over the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm sure the pandemic will accelerate that, around the cybersecurity, where people have been very nervous about moving to the cloud. And I've seen a complete U-turn in the last 2 or 3 years to because of cybersecurity, saying, well, at least the big providers, we use sort of Amazon as our sort of cloud provider, but there are all those big providers out there. They're spending far more cash on cybersecurity than most middle-sized firms, and certainly more than I could in that area. So I think the confidence is moving more towards actually you're more secure on the cloud, because you're outsourcing that responsibility, but you've got a lot of help from those cloud providers to gear you in the right direction for that. So I think that's a couple of reasons for moving to that SaaS, but I think the pandemic is absolutely accelerating it.
So I want to kind of expand on that point there a wee bit. That there was a time where organizations wanted to have everything in-house and almost horizontally integrate to a point. And now, and I think APIs have kind of been a major factor here. Now it's all about that kind of ecosystem, that marketplace, like with all the best one in the world. Even a small bank like Viola Black, they're probably not going to be able to outspend and out-innovate Amazon when it comes to, say, cybersecurity, but they can, of course, work with them. So, with that in mind, where do you see your role within this ecosystem to the banks?
No, absolutely, and I think it's all about mutualizing the cost base, because I think the pandemic already has put extra cost pressures on absolutely everybody, and nobody can do everything themselves, or not to the specialist degree that you need to do. So our focus very much is that sort of middle and back office sort of processing. It's not a massive competitive advantage to banks and brokers out there. It's a matter of making sure that processing works efficiently. So you're not giving away the crown jewels to outsource your sort of middle and post trade area. It's about getting the efficiency, and that efficiency is going to come from outsourcing to somebody who specializes in that. And I think similar to us, we need the absolute support of the infrastructure, physical infrastructure. We've outsourced that to cloud providers because we're not specialized in that. So this ecosystem is actually very much coming together from that. You mentioned the open APIs as well. And I think the open APIs, but also the standards. So the APIs almost force the standards. So we've certainly been working a lot historically in settlement area. We've got Swift standards, and that sort of helps all the payments flow very smoothly, etc. In the middle office space, we've done a lot of work recently with Fix, because that seems to be one of the standards coming around the middle office, and making that interaction and that flow between front office, middle office, and sort of back office as automated as possible. Those standards push that into APIs that are then standard between vendors and between in-house and vendors, in-house from the financial firm's point of view. I think that creates the glue that makes much more efficiency and that gets rid of even more of the manual processes that still exist.
Excellent, very well said there. I want to talk a little bit around. I remember it was a Cyboss conference, and one of the quotes that was said, I can't remember who said it, but it stuck with me, was that if we are working 99.99999% of the time, not good enough, because with these kind of assessment figures and the sheer volume of reconciliation, that 0.00001 is actually a huge volume. So how critical is it to prevent these kind of settlement failures, and what are you doing with your 3Fs to prevent this?
No, I think yes, the fast, flexible, and future-proof for sure. I think the regulatory changes coming in, things like CSDR, they're putting more pressure on that settlement. As you say, it's the even the 0.001 is going to be costly. So the focus, I think, is moving some of that checking and automation towards the front office. So that's why I think particularly the middle office is becoming a bit of a focus for us at the moment, because the more you can get that middle office right, the more then the downstream settlement and settlement date and settlement failures will be less. So we've put in fact we've got a middle office campaign going on at the moment to make sure that some of that checking gets done in a more automated way up front, and I think that will have very good implications on the lack of settlement failures going forward.
So let's I kind of want to go back again and just expand around when we're talking about cloud and scale. We did an interview, and one of the things that was brought up was that this company, they started back in 2007 on the cloud, and there was a failure, so they moved back onto prem, and then they realized, actually this is fine, but let's move back into the cloud. And then they said this is just a game changer compared to how it was, which is a little bit unusual. What are the limitations here when it comes to scaling within the cloud? What's the actual? We've talked a lot of positives, but I'm struggling to see any of the drawbacks of why this hasn't been done, other than the culture. And hopefully, it seems that this pandemic has almost changed that mindset.
No, I think it has. The first thing to say is that architecturally, though, a system has to be. It doesn't have to be sort of built for the cloud, but it does have to be architecturally constructed in a scalable way. So we very much we have a horizontal scalable solution that we had from day one, which is why 5 or more than 5 years ago now, moving to cloud for us was very straightforward. So it has to have those aspects. It has to be a modular system. I mean, we're modular. We're moving even more now to microservices and the API sort of front to that, to allow our solution to be not just interacted with humans, but interacted with other sort of automated systems and sort of processes. So I think it's absolutely a game changer for speed to market. So our fast is very much there. We can get up and running literally the press of a button, and we can have the start of a system for deployment to a client up and running incredibly quickly. We don't have to buy kit anymore. We don't have to sort of wait for sort of orders to come through or networks, etc. It's all in place. We can position that anywhere in the world or anywhere where AWS is at the moment. So geographical restrictions on where your data is allowed to be, they've gone, they've become not an issue anymore. So I think it provides all of that side of getting to market very quickly. Our flexible is also there, because I think the dynamic way that you can scale. In fact, we had an incident with a client where the good old-fashioned digger pulled up the network, which took obviously a while for that to get fixed. It was at the client side. So we had to then process all of their day's trades within a short window, and literally that was dynamic. That sort of racked up more than 4 million trades a day, which is what they were doing at the time, and that all got done within an hour because we managed to be able to sort of dynamically sort of rack up the processing. And I think the final one of our F's, the sort of the future proof, getting onto a cloud-based and sort of SaaS-based platform, it does allow you to take advantage of things going forward, such as AI, because I think although the vast majority of the benefit moving from a legacy system to a modern platform just comes from the fact that you can automate things in a normal, straightforward, rules-based way. The future, is moving towards the AI and what added analysis can be done for that. And being on a cloud platform, there are lots of other services on the cloud that you can connect to, whether that's data services that are already up and running and ready, and you can start mixing your data, which obviously from a back office point of view, you've got really good quality, reconciled data. It's all of your clients' transactions and trades. You can start mixing that with other vendors, other data vendors' data, whether that's day-to-day shopping activities or US election sort of predictions. You can start mixing that, and I think that's where the future holds, is mixing the AI techniques across different data sets, including your own transactional data.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things you mentioned earlier is around reconciliations and the ability to deploy various AI within that sector. There, it's just an absolute game changer, especially compounded with not only your data, but when you can mix that with other information as well. It just lowers fraud, lowers any kind of failures, and gives you that kind of sort of scaling ability.
No, I think certainly our philosophy has been moving to that sort of big data platform. So although we've got highly structured data, obviously with our transactions and sort of client databases, moving that into a big data. In this case, we use AWS Athena. That allows you to sort of mix and match the sort of data. So we've got a nice sort of replicated set of information in that space that can be mixed with others to put the AI. So although we're not AI specialists, we can bring those specialists in to mix with our data and other people's data. I think the general reconciliation side of things, I think, is if you get the automation and the messaging coming from your counterparties and getting that automated, I think that takes you to a very high level. And I think what AI will do, certainly in that reconciliation space, is we're already exception processing. I think you find AA will be dealing with the exceptions on the exceptions. So, the standard exceptions, if you can be dealing with those AI techniques will start to allow you to analyze more of the not just the failures, but actually the pattern of failures. So maybe even you can predict what those failures are going to be and take preventative action.
Absolutely. Well, let's whilst we're on the subject of AI, let's look to the future. Let's look to 2021. What are some of the priorities that you think are going to be for some of your clients moving into the future? And you mentioned, of course, your geographical in obviously the East Coast and Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong. What are some of the areas that you're going to be focused on in terms of 2021?
Yeah, for us certainly, I think the market volatility of 2020, I don't think will stop. I think we're about to see the US elections and Brexit's coming very close for us. So I think 2021 will be more of the same from a volatility perspective. I think the changes that we've seen around digital assets is a very interesting one. So we've seen the pace of change increasing around regulation, but actually these digital assets are now in that regulated space. So we've seen cryptocurrencies, the security token offerings, effectively tokenized IPOs. We've seen that becoming much more available on exchanges, and that's certainly something we're going to be pursuing. And as a cross-asset system, that's just another asset class for us. But I think certainly the market seems to be moving in that direction. And I think legacy systems are going to find it much harder to adapt to those market changes. So I think that is going to drive the acceleration to more sort of cloud-based platforms in 2021. So I think generally the effects of the pandemic is going to be more automation, more move to cloud, and I believe 2021 is going to be a catch-up year from the effects of the pandemic.
Well, thank you very much for that, Brian. Now, where is the best place to reach out to you? Where's best to find out more about yourself and Torstone?
Yeah, of course. I guess the website is always the first port of call, which is torstonetechnology.com, and you'll find ways to get in touch with those or reach out directly to me at brian.collings@torstonetechnology.com.
Absolutely, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you at Cybos in Singapore if all goes well next year.
In person, hopefully, but if not, virtually, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.